Thank you so much for that welcome. And it was great sitting with you for a little while this morning, talking about those that are no longer with us, but about their contribution upon which we are all building. It's wonderful to hear you talk about those years, so thank you for that. I'm here to talk about the Yoorrook Justice Commission. Yoorrook is the first formal truth-telling process in Australia, established by the Letters Patent in May 2021. Sadly, it's the only one to date. We thought we were going to have company, another state, and to our great disappointment, Queensland Truth and Healing Inquiry, the second truth-telling process for the country, seems likely to be abolished. But Yoorrook continues full steam ahead and has to be full steam because we are time poor. But a few facts about Yoorrook. It is Indigenous-led, that is, 4 of the 5 commissioners are Indigenous, 3 are Victorian traditional owners, around 40% of our staff are First Peoples, and 2 of our council assisting are First Peoples. Yoorrook means truth in the Wamba language. It has powers of a royal commission, the most powerful form of inquiry in the state. This gives the commission the power to compel witnesses to give evidence and to issue notices to produce. Since the commission began, it has held specific inquiries into Victoria's child protection and criminal justice systems, land injustice, health, education, housing and the economy. It has held 67 days of public hearings across 7 hearing blocks with 229 witnesses. We have heard evidence from First Peoples with lived experience of systemic injustice, from community groups and organisations, government ministers, departmental officials, the Attorney-General and the Premier. We have heard from other Victorians, including descendants of early colonial figures. We have held hundreds of community events, information sessions and roundtables. We have received over 1,000 submissions to date from individuals and organisations, made numerous visits to prisons to gather evidence, as well as sites of cultural significance and historical importance to our people. We have received some 10,000 documents from the Victorian Government in response to notices to produce. And we have engaged with more than 8,000 of our people directly through this process. As commissioners of this historic inquiry, we are aware of the great responsibility that rests with each of us, and we do not take this lightly. We realise that helping offer a path forward for all Victorians to understand and to learn the full history of this place, now called Victoria, is an important task. This year has been extremely busy for the Commission, completing inquiries into land, sky and waters, while we were simultaneously conducting inquiries into education, health, housing, economic and political life. We also had a special Descendants' Day in which 3 other Victorian witnesses descended from the first people who gave evidence. I want to share some of the evidence that really stood out to me to help paint a picture of what the Commission has heard. Yoorrook's land injustice inquiry began on Gunditjmara country, where the 1834 was the year that Edward Henty took the land illegally. This established the first permanent European settlement in Western Victoria. To this day, there is a sign as you enter the town saying, "This is the birthplace of Victoria." Gunditjmara people do not accept that, neither do we, the Commission. This was the start of an unbroken line of injustice faced by First Peoples, which continues to this day. Commission has heard evidence of the use of violence and massacres by settlers during the 1830s, 40s and 50s, a 20-year period in which the Victorian population was decimated. By the 1850s, the Aboriginal population in Victoria went from around 60,000 before European arrival to less than 2,000, thanks to disease and violence. Professor Richard Broome described colonisation in Victoria as the swiftest expansion within the British Empire of any occupation of land. Government ministers told commissioners in their evidence to the Commission of the facts around this loss in terms of value. 1.89 billion in revenue generated for the state from forestry, grazing licences in a 13-year period. 83 billion in revenue generated by the state from water in the same period. $287 billion of gold extracted from our lands since 1851, with none of that going directly to First Peoples. Yoorrook recently held a Descendants' Day, as I mentioned earlier, in which 3 witnesses gave evidence. This included Peter Sharp, a great-grandson of the former Prime Minister, Alfred Deakin, and he talked about Deakin's role in the creation and passing of the 1886 Act, which is the act in which so-called protection caused the removal of children, and children were removed from their families on missions where their skin colour was fair. They were taken away from their family. This act redefined Aboriginality to exclude many of mixed heritage, reducing the overall population of First Peoples with the stroke of a pen. This was really the beginning of what became the stolen generations. The Minister for Education told the Commission how education has been used by government as a tool to reinforce racist perceptions and stereotypes, thus perpetuating false narratives about cultural history. We heard how silos of colonisation continue to entrench structural disadvantage on First Peoples across the education, health and housing sectors. It is deeply embedded in justice, child protection, family violence, land injustice and the economy. If you just think about it, we had, from the 1860s, Victoria as a state, with protection legislation, so-called, until 1957, which brought the Welfare Act, which was a continue of similar behaviour. And it is still with us in terms of the structures of some of the departments that have had been foundational in some of our spaces. We've heard how the silos of colonisation continue to entrench structural disadvantage. It is deeply embedded, as I said, in child protection, family violence, land injustice and the economy. We've heard evidence around the government's fear of handing over resources and control to First Peoples and enabling genuine self-determination. The Health Minister accepted that Victoria's health services are not always culturally safe places for First Peoples, and that racism in hospitals can be at a crisis point if not properly resourced. The Minister for Housing said we created homelessness and then we turned away from it. For too long, we refused to even acknowledge that its existence and impact was our doing. The evidence Yoorrook has uncovered has often been raw and emotional. As an Aboriginal person who has lived through this, it is deeply personal, and at times, we commissioners have shared our own experiences with some of our people. We are in the final 7 months of the Royal Commission, finishing on the 30th of June next year. Submissions to Yoorrook closed last Saturday, with hundreds coming in the final weeks. So many we had to extend the final deadline. Our legal team will continue to review each submission before it can be published on our website if the person wishes that. We have now received over 1,000 submissions in total. The Commission, though, is busy with the final report, which will be around 40 chapters, and we are also developing our final recommendations, which is no small task. Our communications and engagement teams are finding new and interesting ways to share the stories given to Yoorrook with the rest of Victoria, so watch our website. We have so much rich evidence that we want to share this so that we can all learn and understand. We are also working on an official public record which will go to the Victorian Government and the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria. This aims to tell this full story of our shared history in Victoria. And we are planning a range of events to engage Victorians as we wind down. Of course, we'll follow the treaty process closely as it has begun. We understand the truth of the past and how it connects with the present. Fear can be dissipated because we understand why change is needed. We want all Victorians to understand why change is needed. They need to know what really happened, because those early pieces of legislation put us out of sight and out of mind. We can handle the truth. It's about opening our hearts and minds for a better future for all Victorians. Thank you.
Nata all. Trav Lovett here, proud Kerrupmara Gunditjmara man. Latta Latawa Latun Latlinyum Travis Lovett Kerrupmara Gunditjmara meeting. Linyan Kokon Canon Consultatic Butchbim, Yumbin meeting. Radandari Ma meeting, Colin meeting. Nian Karabanjul Wangwa Ma Wuran Buka Bidalong Purity meeting. Narakitong meeting, Narakitong Ma. Min Mern Moon. I just acknowledge country, pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people. And all mob from all across Australia coming here, recognise that sovereignty is never ceded in a language term, not so much the sovereignty part in the colonial context. And I think I just want to also thank Shelley for all the deadly work that she's doing, but also Unk there. Sorry I can't see you. Hopefully we might even encourage people to move. No, I'm only joking. Notice this to produce. You know, we're a Royal Commission, we might compel some people to come forward. What do you reckon? Eh? Don't worry about legislation, let's just use the power we got. 7 months left, as the chair said. No, we're not about power tripping. We're about dismantling power though, right? But really important for us to come here share some of the insights that we've gained over the last nearly 4 years, but 3.5 years. Thank Aunt for kind of providing a really broad context, but we want this to be an engaging conversation as well. So I've got some questions that I'm going to ask Aunt, but also share some insights myself, and we want to encourage people to feel comfortable and confident to also ask us questions, because we want to know what you also want to know about this work and some of the other, I guess, points that we're really trying to, create a shared future. I noticed Uncle Rod there. Last night you're up on the dance floor. How come you're not at the front seat here with us? Hey? Oh, good, deadly. Good to see you anyway. I think this is really important, right? Like, we try to crack jokes and stuff and things like that, but we're dealing with deep trauma here. So one of the things we do try to prioritise in the Commission is bringing our people along, but also sharing some humour as well, because that keeps you grounded, but also, fresh-minded in a sense, because as Aunt just highlighted, really high level, but a lot of injustices that have happened. It's not just about the economic wealth that we've been shut out of. It's about, the continued policies of government. Aunt mentioned 10,000 documents that we've extracted from the state. 10,000 documents. We've got to be really clear here that the state, maybe not everyday Victorians and Australians know, but the state, they knew all this. I thought it might have been the state shutting me out here, turning the mic off. But the state knew about this. They've known about this the whole time. And we want to be really clear on that. And they've suppressed some of the information. But also, this is the importance of truth-telling and our ability to be able to share that with our people, but also understand the continued experiences that our people have gone through as well. So we're incredibly optimistic. 2 weeks ago, Thursday, there was a significant moment happened here in Victoria with the launch of the treaty negotiations as well. So I just want to give a clap to our people. And this is not only just to us in Victoria, but we've had so much help from all mobs from across Australia to continually fight for truth, treaty, voice, the principles of Uluru Statement from the Heart, but also beyond that as well. So I just want to give our people here in Vic big shout out to all our ancestors who have fought really hard, who are not here with us anymore.
Can I just Okay. I just want to acknowledge, before we get underway with discussion, the Queensland team that's here. Thank you for being here, and we just watch with horror what's happening in your state, but we're with you in spirit, and we just hope that things can't get worse, but it's a struggle when things like this happen, and of course we're in a situation where we'll have elections coming up too, so we're mindful that we can't be settled about what we've got at the moment. So thank you for being here and talking with us last night. Thank you.
And those mob are up next as well, so we'll be counting how many people leave the room. No, I'm joking. But again, really important that Aunt recognises the contributions of other mobs as well. I'm going to ask you a question to kick off. You said Yoorrook is the most important work you will ever do in your life. Can you begin by reflecting a little on this point?
Yes, well, it is the most important work because I made the decision to join Yoorrook after I retired. I was already retired from permanent employment. But I had been on a journey on committees. I was still working on committees, and many of those committees were to do with land justice and a pathway to change within the state of Victoria, like the Victorian Aboriginal Heritage Act, which referenced traditional owners for the first time, building on the native title declarations of the 3 and then 4 groups. And so some people had hope And that's not to ignore that Yoorrook case was refused. I mean, that's one of the greatest travesties in this country around native title law, of any group that could be not acknowledged for who they are. Yoorrook are embedded in the land and the water where they come from, and we all know that, but the law couldn't see that. And that is a disgrace, a disgraceful decision. So for me, while I was on this journey, mostly this century, it was a step at a time. Things were happening in a constructive way. And then we got a premier who asked us what did we want. And we couldn't actually give him an answer the first time he asked that question. We were gobsmacked that he said that. But eventually, people from that cohort of organisations that I've just named that were created this century said, we want treaty. So we were sent to work with different people in and out at different times, working with the government towards how treaty could be worked on between the government and this rather large advisory committee at the time. And we got to a point where we had an agreement that it should happen, and there was a working group. There was another commission prior to that, the Treaty Advancement Commission, which was chaired by Jill Gallagher, who heads the Victorian Aboriginal Community-Controlled Health Organisation in the state. And her work basically set out an agenda for what treaty is now working through. So that created the legislation from that initial meeting about what do we want. I was on the working party to that group, and we had to seek legal advice about the community's opinion as well as against what the government was getting, just to see whether, test whether things stood up. And there was agreement. I think we only had 2 meetings with the legal people from the working group. And so treaty began just when COVID hit, of course, and the rest is led us to this day where I'm sitting here talking about this to you, really. And it's only a few words, but it's some years, obviously, you can tell. And a long journey, a bit of heartache, different kinds of views about how to get there by some groups, but everybody's staunch about wanting to be recognised as belonging to this place with their names as the tribes, the clans, who they are. That's really, really been important, that we've been able to use our language, describe ourselves by our names that we've always known. So that's a long-winded answer, but...
No, I think it's really important, touched upon a lot of key kind of milestones. And I asked myself this similar question, and I put it in this context where I hope it's not the most important work I'll ever do. Obviously, there's a bit of an age difference here. I'm still looking good, fresh and young, but we've got a long way. We've got to build on the foundations of our elders, right? We always talk about using our elders and our ancestors, fight, struggle, but more importantly, their resistance. So I'm hoping, for me though, this is not the most important work that I'll ever do or ever be a part of. That's not to diminish the importance of the task that we have on our hands at the moment, though. It's not lost on us. Many are sleepless nights. Aunt was talking a little bit earlier in the speech about recommendations. We awake 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes texting each other going, what about this, what about that? We're really trying really hard to get this right. We fought really hard for this process, but to also encourage our people to come forward. Another stat that Aunt reflected on, which was over 1,000 people coming forward. And I just want to thank those individuals and their families for coming forward and showing vulnerability, because it takes a lot to be able to come forward. People go, oh, what's the, how many numbers and so forth. But also sometimes people come and share their lived experience on behalf of their family as well. So it's really important that, that we're encouraging people to be able to heal through this process. We've put in particular mechanisms around social and emotional well-being. So for me, again, I hope that this is not the most important work we'll do. Hopefully we will make recommendations, not hopefully to the state, particularly about land, water and skies. And that's really important for us because that's what they came for first. They came for the land illegally as the Henties arrived 190 years ago, 2 weeks Tuesday, in Victoria down in Portland there. So they came for the land. Really important that all the recommendations are obviously advocated for. People ask me a lot of the time about the difference between like truth-telling and the Royal Commission, and why a Royal Commission? Because we had the Royal Commission on Aboriginal deaths in custody, and the recommendations haven't been implemented across governments. And my response there in reflecting is there's never a perfect model, but what we've got here in Victoria is the key architecture, and the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria is something that we didn't have when we had the Royal Commission to Aboriginal deaths in custody. That's not to take away from the community advocacy from the Aboriginal Justice Forum and key people in Victoria advocating for our rights, and also to not have any more deaths in custody. But we never had an elected body that has had this kind of, I guess, authority to deal with government. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. We know it's not perfect, but we will refine it over time. They had maybe 85 years jump on us in the context to political advocacy and stuff. It's not to say the voices weren't there. Again, I'm jumping around a bit here, but there's a lot coming to my mind around people who fought hard for 190 years. Our people were never silent, never silent at all. They've been fighting this whole time for our rights to be upheld and recognised, and we always hear rhetoric around why do blackfellas get to negotiate treaty, and we come back to that colonial term, which is sovereignty. We are sovereign people, we negotiate treaty with another sovereign entity, again in colonial terms. That's why we get to come to the table to negotiate treaty, and we're different. Everyone's human rights are all recognised and values, but we're different because we've got special cultural rights. And that's really important to us, and it's really important that our people understand what those rights are, because if you don't know your rights, you got no rights, yeah? It's true, right? It's not a basic saying, but it's the truth. You don't know what your rights are, then how do you fight for your rights? So I'm getting myself sidetracked here. You were worried about you getting sidetracked. What about me? Us Gunditjmara people, we love a yarn. We talk underwater. That's why we talk really fast, because we've got a lot to say. So, and I'll keep moving on. So again, I hope this is not the most important work. I'm really excited about the recommendations that we will create to go back to the First Peoples Assembly and the government, and hopefully in the future we can work on implementing those recommendations and seeing the transformational change that is the strong aspiration that we underpinned through three key strategic pillars here, which is truth, understanding and transformation. They are our three key pillars that we keep going back to, because it's easy to get caught in a lot of noise and externalities and so forth, but they're the three things. If we focus in on them, that's how we get a more equitable society and justice for our mob. It's an ongoing task trying to navigate government, and I think it's something that I always, I'm impatient. I'm 41 and I'm impatient. I want to see change because people like this and our elders who are past have fought really hard, and some of them haven't been able to see us get to the table to negotiate treaty. They're watching down and setting their positive spirits, but we're losing too many of our old people and young people as well on this journey towards trying to get justice. So, but we're ever optimistic around that. Any questions from you yet? I can keep going. I've got a few more here. Can't start formulating your questions. Here we go. Well, maybe I'll ask Aunt a question while that's coming, and then we'll go to you. What are you hoping will be achieved by the Commission?
Well, obviously, we want we want those goals of truth, understanding and transformation to happen. But history tells us that nothing happens quickly. And this is why the work that we have done at Yoorrook is so important. And I just remind people that it took from federation, from 1901 constitution, it took 67 years to include Aboriginal people in that constitution. 67 years, you know, 2/3 of a century. And that's what we're up against. The colonial construct, the way things are done in this state, the bureaucracy, those things are much slower than we would like. And any reference to some of the issues that we're dealing with, like child protection and criminal justice, goes to the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody recommendations, because they hadn't been properly implemented. So there's a history here that's against us, and this is why it is so important, and this is why the First Peoples Assembly is so important, and the fact that a statewide treaty has commenced the process for that to happen, and that will test everybody involved in that exercise.
Next
I know so much of what you've heard has been traumatic, but has it been healing at the same time?
Well, it's mixed. I mean, it's all of the emotions. You know, we've heard some of the very worst things that we've heard. I've had some occasions where, when I've heard witnesses speaking in closed sessions, I couldn't believe that this is Australia, that bad. But at the same time, those very people, how they conduct themselves, how they tell the story and how they are after they've told the story, uplift you, because their strength and their ability, despite the heartache and the horrible things that have been done to them, they keep going. And we have to believe in our people. We have to support that kind of resilience. I mean, the word's overused, I think, resilience. But people do keep hope, want change. And I have to say that we've had some good moments and we've had some really sad moments where, you know, we've had crying in a session and everybody's impacted. But it comes out, the story comes out, and there's a follow-up in a way that hopefully is helpful, because we do have a team of people that at the beginning we had a bigger team of people that were involved in social and emotional well-being, and we always had them on standby. In our first outings as a commission, we went out straight after COVID without being properly introduced, where the plan had been that we would visit a number of communities and have detailed engagement, but we couldn't do that. We ended up having to split up into groups of 2 or 3, so it was very thin. And at that outing, I have to say, I was really confronted by the mixture of issues that came before us. And I'd have to say that it was one of the hardest, that was one of the hardest things, to sit and listen to these things. But those same people give strength, because afterwards they will say something like, I feel lighter now that I've said that. They'll make a comment that they feel better. And that just, you know, blows your mind that people have that strength. And it just happened over and over again. And that was before we got on the record. This was the getting to know people in places that we did straight after COVID. And it does stay with me, certain people's voices, certain people's stories. And I'll never forget it, because that's the story. That's the story of Victoria, that I'm, in one way, can you say privileged to be hearing that? Privileged to be able to be part of doing something about it? Yes. And that's what really makes it so important for the future. And for someone like Travis, at the age he's able to share that whole experience and hear from those of us who were at the beginning, and is more moved because he's younger and he's got a different mindset about how let's be strong about this, and very constructive. So it's a tough gig, and that's one of the things. Not only is it the most important thing, that's what makes it hard, is living through that. And people thank you. You thank us at the end. That always gets me.
And I think just not to go over it again, but to point out as well that we've been really flexible in how we've taken truth. So we haven't just, like, you see the hearings on when we televise the hearings, or when they're live streamed rather. That's really important, that's really powerful, and some of our people, particularly organisations, have come forward, our mob, but also government witnesses. But many of the people who have come forward, we've been really flexible. It might be in their living room. It might be, the stereotypical thing, and it's beside the river, and so forth as well. We have been really flexible around how we've taken that, and yes, we've had some good dialogue, and also we'll give our shout out to KWM, who have been a big supporters and champions of the work that we've done in our legal mob to help us. And it's always important that we, acknowledge people's contributions as well. So, but being really versatile, and I think that's the point around the truth-telling compared to the Royal Commission. So yes, with government, we give them the Royal Commission treatment, because that's what they, that's the role for them. But with our people, and it's no difference in the importance though. So we just do things. We don't do things casually as mob, we do things less formal. And I think there's a real clear distinction there. It's still important, it's still truth, and we value that truth as well. And one story that comes to my mind, and there's heaps, but just a quick one that I did want to share was, I'd known this one particular uncle who was walking around, big, heavy-shouldered for a long period of time, and he kept on coming up at every function that we had. And many of you who live in Victoria will know who I am, but I won't name them. And in a real rut for a long period of time, and he kept on coming up going, yeah, I'm going to come and share my truth, rah. And this was about a year. He's like coming up to me, I'm like, yeah, we're all here, anytime you want to come forward. Fast forward a year, he decides to come forward. I personally spent 8 hours with him. 8 hours. He came and he brought 15 boxes of detailed information, records around how he'd been treated, how his people had been treated. So it was personal, but it was also trying to navigate the complex situation that is native title and the traditional owner settlement agreement here, and how that process makes our people fight over land and boundaries and all that other stuff. So there's been great achievements through that, and I don't want to take away from the fight from particularly Uncle Eddie Mabo and the work that he was able to do. 100%. Please, I don't want people walking away thinking that this is a dig there. But for what it's meant for us here in Victoria is no different. But I'm talking about a Victorian context. It butts our people up, and we end up focusing a lot of time on the legal aspect rather than the cultural aspect about coming together, supporting each other and healing. So Uncle had been walking around for a long period of time. Anyway, after the 8 hours, he'd come forward and then had a big hug at the end of it. And ever since then, and this is probably about 6 months now that he'd come and shared his truth, every single time I see him somewhere, he'll always walk up and go, thank you. I feel like finally, in my first time in my life, and he in his late 60s, and he's like, finally I feel that someone's finally listened. And having the ability to come and share his truth, it doesn't get him all the answers, but he feels heard, valued, seen, and I think that's a really important point. So, we flex on the Royal Commission powers when we need to, but the real importance here is our people's story, lived experience, and their truths, and being present in the moment with them. And sometimes it is 1 hour, sometimes it's 20 hours, and that's just how it is. And then we've also got social emotional well-being, that we wrap around our people as well. And I think that's something. So I'll throw over here now.
Hello, my name's Fabian. I'm from Noongar country. My questions are, the colonial structure is working fine because the system's not broken. It's working to how the government wants it to work. It's working fine to actually keep us and to suppress us and to keep us and control us at the moment. So the system's working fine for them, okay? Also in Aboriginal politics, also another question is, how will you dismantle the colonial structure? Another question is, with institutional racism and systemic racism, how can you change that? Also, in the Aboriginal sense, there's two folds of it. One, we call it gatekeepers, or Lydia call them gaming mob. And the second one is community. The community don't go to, they go at the bottom of the level and they're not listened to and not spoken to. And for the first one, the gatekeepers, some of the gatekeepers are controlling their space, and they're easy controlled, they're easy, give them a job and give them a purpose, and they control their egos and others, and these white fellas or these all these systems or these governments can actually control these people. They can't control the community. So, and also with that, I've seen a lot of things from my time. I've been fighting not only the white people, but the white people has put these gatekeepers in these involved, and these gatekeepers are very hard to get rid of. So there's a couple of things we need to do: dismantle the colonial structure. Also, another thing, what Lydia Sorpa said, he's not my king. Well, he's not my king. Also, we need to get out of this colonial structure and go to the path of a republic, because this colonial structure, we need to get rid of the entire system, start from scratch, and need to go down the path. Also, with this republic, people will talk about our treaties. Well, we've got an Indigenous land use agreement in Noongar country. Linda Burney, Albanese, Roger Cook, and everyone calling it that's Noongar treaty. No, it's not Noongar treaty, it's Indigenous land use agreement. And with our Indigenous land use agreement, it wasn't called a treaty at any point or any time. What happened is the land councils or SWOLs negotiated with the government without talking to the people about what we wanted, and they just told us, take it, $1.3 billion, take it or leave it. So that's my a few questions about that. First one, dismantle the colonial structure, institutional racism, systemic racism, and also these gatekeepers and the community, and also the republic. So how can your Justice Commission look at those sort of issues?
Well, you've raised a whole lot of issues there, big picture issues. We have a terms of reference, and of course we're very aware of what the importance of making change. And as I said, the example I gave about 67 years of the same constitution excluding us, and you talk about gatekeepers. We need to be on top of how we want to go ahead, and in Victoria there has been agreement now for the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, which is an elected body representing some 31, or we're having 31 members of traditional owners from the state. Now these things will be tested, of course, but I think we have to wait and see how well things turn out, because we're in a different political climate with what happened with The Voice, I would have to say, and I don't know how other people feel here, but it was certainly very disappointing. And from Victoria's point of view, Victoria, which has always prided itself on having strong allies for our work from the beginning, we didn't get over the line with the yes vote, and that was a big shock to many Victorians, not just our own people. But little battles are fought along the way, and one of the things I would advise you, and I'm not really answering your questions because I can't, but is to have a look at our website, and we have different short stories from people who've fought individual battles along the way. And I'm talking about Uncle Colin Walker, a Yoorrook man, never left his country, who talks about and muses in about a 3-minute piece how ridiculous it is that, you know, they hadn't been recognised. And he's musing in the most amazing way at the ignorance of white man and not understanding this concept of who and where our people belong. Similar with some women who fought one of the companies back in the 60s or 70s. I'm talking about Tina and the girl owner, Sandra. They took on one of the, what's the name of the company? Alcoa, yes. And they just went for it and they won, you know. I mean, these are things that people have done and they give inspiration to us. Now, if we can't do a bit more than that as a commission, well, we'll be very disappointed. But already, I think there is some change in some people's thinking. I like to even think within government there's some change, even though government is so harnessed in the way it operates as a bureaucracy. I like to think that the talk, the fact that people came before us and gave all these apologies, and the apologies don't mean anything. We want the action that needs to flow to make the changes, and we can reiterate at that and we can hold them to account for that. And words that they say from now on, you know, are on the public record, that if it's in response to this commission. So we've got certain accountabilities, but it's a tough space.
I agree with that. And also, I mean, part of our terms of reference is to, and I think we've done this pretty well, it's not perfect, but highlight the systematic injustices that continue to face our people. We've highlighted, and we've also got people finally on the public record admitting to, you know, the racism that underpins the deep-seated colonial roots in child protection, criminal justice. We had the police commissioner come forward and apologise and say, for the first time, we've been targeting your people, you know. We'd never had a commissioner ever come out and say that. And whilst, you know, it's not just about the apology, it's about what the action's taken next. But we have the ability through the powers that we have and building on the truths that we've received from mob and what they want to see in the future to recommend transformational change that needs to be negotiated through treaty. And I'm really confident in that. Will it be perfect? Again, I always put the caveats around, it's not going to be perfect. We're not going to get everything we want in the treaty, we know that, but at the same time, we just need to keep setting the baseline. If we're resetting the baseline, we're still growing. Not going backwards, but resetting the baseline around that. With the Republic, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll hand that over to the next panel to answer that one. Nah, I'm only joking, Queensland mob. But you're laughing at my own joke, real deadly. Yeah. But you know, maybe some more, you know, deadly other. I'm not a lawyer, but someone else can kind of answer that. I don't know if the Republic kind of gives us any more authority or any less authority, so I can't answer that. But again, just with the recommendations that we will make, I'm confident in our ability to also, you know, change legislation for the future, but also, and that's a matter for government of the day as well. And I think that's something that's always a challenge, and we've seen that in more recent times, particularly in the last couple of weeks, around them being able to sneak things through and so forth as well, which is, you know, absolutely terrible. And hopefully through the future assembly that we can have stronger powers and authority to be able to make sure that we have a say in most things that go through that affect our lives as well. But yeah, I think I'll try to kind of cover as much as I can there. Yeah. But we don't want to underestimate as well. So one other thing that the police commissioner had said, and we'd never heard this before, and we've been fighting for 200 years about independent police oversight. And the chief commissioner, when I'd asked him, he turned around and said, well, prior to coming to Yoorrook, and this is the power of truth-telling as well, prior to coming to Yoorrook, I was dead against saying that we needed independent oversight for police. But after doing my preparation and understanding, and now coming here and listening and being questioned, I've changed my mind. Now, this is a big, old-school institution, one of the most conservative, and you mob know this as lawyers and legal people and people attending legal conferences is pretty risk-adverse and slow to change. So I think that, again, these people coming forward and putting that on the public record, and that's also part of our letters patent. So yes, we provide a report and recommendations back to government, but we're also developing an official public record. And that's really important because the full story hasn't been told. The colonial story's been told, and we see that in the school curriculum, but also every single town and city you go to, there's monuments everywhere. And I don't want to get into the monument debate here because I'll get too wild. But I think you get where I'm going there, is that it's everywhere, it's in your face. But our people and our people's contributions, struggle, resistance, but achievements, all the shit that our people have been through, and yet we're still, look at how many mob in the room here. Not just in the room, but everyone out there fighting hard. We've got hundreds of businesses setting up and generating and their own wealth, but also like self-determination is happening. You know, like that's incredibly important. And this is some of the things that we can do through establishing an official public record where we get to tell the full story, not wipe colonisation out for what they've done. No, that needs to be told alongside the true history, the full history about where we're trying to get to. That's how we walk together in the future. Don't ignore, don't say it didn't happen. It's about how we can work forward utilising the full story. This is why we're in the situation we are. This mixed notion of blackfellas get everything. Well, why are we the poorest on our own lands and waters? It's just ridiculous that people say that we get everything. We don't get bugger all. We fight for land rights. You know, our mob, Gunditjmara, 10 years in the courts, fighting the colonial system, and then all we get, and it's not a sob story on native title, but we didn't get much rights. The ability to do, you know, a few little things, primarily welcome to countries and smoking ceremonies, which are incredibly important to make sure that our culture can still carry on. But there's other things. There's other things that we want to be able to generate. What about the economic wealth? I talked a little bit earlier about the billions of dollars that have been extracted from lands, and how much do we get? Zero. So, but you know, we're really optimistic that we can turn this around and we can change this, and we need people like yourselves going in and championing that. So, sorry, a long way. I answered some of them for you, but not all.
I think one of the changes, I mean, a conference like this of legal people having two entities that went to to commissions of inquiry status is indicating a change has happened. It's not perfect, as we've said, and we're really disappointed with what's happened in Queensland. However, there are other states who are also watching what's happening and thinking how best to do it and whether it's a different way to do it. But we're still here. We're in the fight. We're not going to go away, and that's. I think that's one of our strengths. We're in it to the end.
Yeah, we're not negative people. Just to be clear, you know, we're looking at some years going, oh dear, this is really bad. But we are certainly optimistic about the future, and we need people. We want to walk with people, and that's what our people have always fought for: walking with non-Aboriginal people, so we can create change, and we're incredibly optimistic about that. I don't want you mob to leave you feeling that that's not the case. Next question. How much longer we got? We got a few more to go. Is that all right? One last one. All right. We'll go two just because we want to be rebellious. No, one.
Me? I have a question for Aunt. Thank you, both of you, for sharing your story today. I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman, and my aunt has a lot of information to share, but culturally, I'm not sure how to approach it with her, and I wonder if you have any advice you might be able to share with us for other mob, how we can encourage our elders to share their stories.
That's a hard one. It's within families there's different things I can't say, but Wurundjeri, we're on Wurundjeri land.
I'm Wiradjuri.
Sorry, Wiradjuri. Oh, Wiradjuri. Okay. Oh, well, you're over the river. You're another strong mob, strong language mob. But no, I don't know what I can offer you there. But there are people up there that are doing really good things.
When you've been talking with, and yourself, Travis, when you were talking with that man for 8 hours.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yes. When you talked about the gentleman you spoke with, the uncle, for 8 hours, how do you get the information out? That's what I'd like to know.
We get out of Melbourne. We love working and living on Wurundjeri country, but we get out. I've spent at least 600 hours in the car in the last 12 months. And this is what I mean about being flexible around how we get truth and also where we take truth. It's not about coming to Melbourne and sitting in that big formal hearing room, which is deadly, but it's actually about having the cups of tea. So getting out, talking to people, and then also people's experiences, whether it be positive, and sometimes people feel more traumatic for coming and sharing their stories as well. We don't want to make it all rosy and so forth, but we try to put supports around them. So, but getting out there, being present, we've travelled all parts of this state. There's not one community that we actually haven't been to, and we've been back multiple times. So we might not have seen that person the first time, but then the third time we've been back to these communities, people come forward. Also, like everything in mob affairs, everything's word of mouth. I had this experience, that, or come forward and share your truths. Sometimes the mob are reserved around wanting to come forward as well. Again, another royal commission. And I talked a little bit about trying to work through some of those barriers. But also people need to be in a place that they feel safe and at the right time in their life as well. Because sometimes people come and share the truth and it's not right. And then they've come and started, and then 12 months later they've come back and gone, you know what, I want to start again because I felt I was in the right headspace, but I wasn't, and now I am. So again, being flexible, place, dates, time, weekends, like all that kind of stuff. And that's what I mean about getting out and talking to people, Not everything happens from, the colonial term of ivory towers in Melbourne here. We've literally travelled the state. Yeah, and that's really important that we're in, wherever people feel safe, by the river or having a cup of tea. I don't even drink tea, but I've had a lot of tea that I don't, But you smile and go, oh, deadly, aunt, thank you, or uncle, yeah. No sugar, 10, Anyway, that's part of it though, right? Deadly. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.